And it's just basketball. At the end of the day, it's just basketball.
Like and subscribe on the way in the door, my people. I hope you all are having a truly fantastic day today. Welcome back, my people. You know, Steve Nash was never one of my favorite players. But I must say, with each episode of this Just a Game podcast that airs, he's becoming less and less of one of my favorite players. So I've seen some content creators do videos about this. Steve Nash and LeBron James are saying that, hey, fans need to be taught how to appreciate today's game. So people, in case some of you out there who are not satisfied with the NBA product today, just know the problem is that we need to be taught how to appreciate it. So without further ado, let's check out this clip.
The game's come so far from, like you said, the two bigs, the clutching, grabbing, chucking, the hand checking up the court. Like, man, it was stodgy back in the day.
Right, yeah, for sure, absolutely.
That's the thing. Like, and we'll get to this later in the series, but like, the talk around sometimes, you know, some people aren't as happy with the way the game is. Like, we need to help teach fans like how great the game is now.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going back to that. Right. It's a lot of nostalgia. There's other factors, but like, the game is great, and we need to teach people how to appreciate.
Yeah,
this.
We just need to. I think have an appreciation, and I think if our fans will really go back and watch some of those games, they will realize then maybe that's not something we will want to see on a night-to-night basis.
Agreed.
You know, because the difference between our game now is that all of our games are on television every single day, either nationally, locally, or through League Pass. So you can watch all of our games. In the 80s and the 90s, you may be able to catch one game if you had it locally. If your team had a local broadcast deal, you could catch it. And if not, then you may not see a game for a long time. Let's, you know,
like the NBC broadcast.
NBC broadcast. Maybe once every couple of you maybe catch one or two games, you know, every other week. So, you know, I think the nostalgia of the game, I think it's just a deeper conversation of why we should appreciate and celebrate our game of basketball today, our athletes of today. Just like, you know, the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s guys were celebrated, and 2000 guys were celebrated. So it's definitely a conversation we get to later.
We'll get to that. I'm excited about that for sure.
And there you go, people. If you are not enjoying today's game, it is because you have not been taught to enjoy today's game. Now, first of all, let me start off by saying that is highly insulting. That is highly insulting to tell generations of basketball fans, Steve Nash and LeBron James, most real basketball fans are slightly younger than you, around your age, or older than you. These are the basketball fans that grew the game. These are the basketball fans that fell in love with the game. So to suggest that the reason we don't like the modern game is because we need to be taught to like the modern game is highly insulting. The other thing it makes me think about is the quote, if you're good at something, you'll tell everyone. If you're great at something, they will tell you. I think of this quote because I keep thinking, like, why do you guys have to try so hard to keep telling us how great the modern NBA is? If it was indeed as great as you say, you wouldn't have to tell us. LeBron James, Adam Silver, Nick Wright, Shannon Sharp, Stephen A. Smith, Colin Cowherd, Rich Paul, Chris Broussard, and anybody else you can name in mainstream media. Why do you have to spend so much time telling us how great this game is, when if it was as great as you say it is, you wouldn't have to tell us? If you're good at something, you'll tell everyone. If you're great at something, they will tell you. If the game was great, the fans would be telling you, and you wouldn't have to go on. You wouldn't even have to say anything about it. The fans would reflect in the ratings. So another thing the duck, the deer, the leader of the 4 and 6 Kingdom said, who apparently Steve Nash is now a part of the 4 and 6 Kingdom. Another thing he said was that he thinks if fans actually went back and watched some of the older games, they would say, hey, maybe we don't want to see this. Again, LeBron James, what makes you think that we are not still watching the best version of basketball that we fell in love with? I would much rather go and watch a rerun of a 90s game. It doesn't matter if it's the regular season, playoff, or finals. They are all more intense than all versions of basketball today than to watch, it's like the play-in tournament. I haven't watched a game from the play-in tournament. I hadn't watched one game. Like I've checked the highlights, and checked the final score, but I haven't watched. I'm not that invested in it to make that a priority like basketball used to be for me. So yeah, again, LeBron James, what makes you think that we're not watching? What even makes you think that the younger fans haven't went and checked out? Checked out the older games. Like I said, all you got to do is check out some of these reaction videos of the young kids reacting to the historic Bulls mixtape and Voyager and the best GOAT comparison. And the look on, again, they all say the same thing pretty much. They say this guy doesn't look human. They're like in shock that a human is capable of playing basketball like that. They're in shock of the relentless energy that this guy puts forth through the screen. Like, they are literally in shock. And then they're like, oh man, I didn't know he could play defense like that too. Oh man, I didn't know he could pass like that. They are in shock that literally a player is as good as you could possibly be in every facet of basketball. And, in the top it off, had the highest level of athleticism and hang time and, just all the things that makes the game aesthetically pleasing, on top of being fundamentally sound and one of the fiercest competitors, if not the fiercest, the game has ever seen. All you got to do is watch these reaction videos. So LeBron James, what makes you think people aren't checking out the older games? Another thing the Duck said is, now you can watch all of our games. You can watch all of our games. You got League Pass, you got Amazon, you got this, you got that. Back in the day, you could watch one game if you were lucky. LeBron James, first of all, let me say, most people I know had cable. It didn't matter what was your status in life. It doesn't matter if you were poor or rich. Most people had cable, and within cable, for the most part, you got all the channels. So no, you didn't just have access to one channel that might show the team from your city. No, you had ESPN and ESPN2 and TNT and CBS and all these different stations that would show different games. So you simply had to have cable. And you had access to a multitude of channels, but the cable was the one-stop shop. You know, the cable was the monthly bill that you paid. Now you got to get a subscription to Netflix and Hulu and all these different games that they've tried to divide the NBA games up on, so that now you have to have several subscriptions to several different things instead of it's just one place that encompasses all these different channels. LeBron James. So again, it goes back to, if you're good at something, you will tell them. If you're great at something, they will tell you. First of all, and then he goes into, LeBron James said, "Oh, well, you know why? We the fans just need to be taught to appreciate the game like they did in the 60s and 70s and 80s." Just you saying that, LeBron James, that didn't trigger like another question to you, LeBron James. Like, within saying that, within acknowledging that the game is not appreciated the same way that it was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that should spark a question for you. And that question is, why in all these other eras was the game appreciated more? First of all, you got to understand that, basketball from its inception, there is a growth process. So more and more people, get exposed to it or are aware of it. So it is gaining more and more fans. But at the end of the day, there's a few things at play. The players just aren't likable. Partly, why is that? Because the players aren't playing for the fans anymore. I'm working on a video that just shows how many of the old school players bring up the fans as part of the reason why they go out and give their absolute best. Including one of the most recent, I saw Chris Webber talking about Allen Iverson. And Allen Iverson, he was a little guy for, super quick, lightning fast, athletic, all the things. But he was a little guy. And he was playing in the era of big men. He was playing in the era of Shaquille O'Neal. So he would get bumped and bruised all the time, swollen knees and all these things. And Chris Webber, he said, he asked Allen Iverson, like, why does he do that to his body, so relentlessly? And I'm paraphrasing. And he said Allen's response was like, "Hey, I got to do it for the fans, man." He's like, it might be some kid out there that's his first time getting to see me play. This is the mentality that the previous generations of basketball players had towards the game. And even though Allen Iverson was part of that generation that I thought was kind of start of the things changing in the NBA for the worse in some ways, again, I still love Allen Iverson, and he still had that competitor in him. He was a relentless competitor, and again, he was playing for the fans, and you could see it when he was on the court. So the previous generations, they played for the fans. They played for the love of the game. This LeBron James era, this is not the case. These guys are not playing for the fans and the love of the game. They're not playing for either one of them. They're playing for the money and the praise, and, so they can go and have something to talk about on their podcast after the game. It's completely ridiculous. Now, the other thing is, again, when you watch older games, basketball felt like a battle of wills. To me, that's what makes sports feel genuine. That's what makes sports, that's what draws people into sports. That's what draws the fans into the players, is when they feel the player is really giving their all, and they feel like the player is giving their all for the city and for the franchise and for the fans. This is what makes fans have more of a vested interest in a team besides just liking a team or just liking a team because you like the player on that team. It was much deeper back then. Like I said, all you got to do is just go listen to here's something. Especially if, for you younger people that watch my channel, here's something. Here's a challenge for you, or here's something you can do. Here's some homework. At some point, put on a 90s playoff game, say Bulls versus Knicks, and just listen to it with your eyes closed. And then put on a modern playoff game. I don't care who it is. Take your pick and listen to it with your eyes closed. And I guarantee you will be able to hear the intensity, the difference in intensity in everything. Like I said, in the crowd, the way the crowd cheers, you could tell it was serious. It wasn't just a spectacle. It wasn't just clapping because somebody pulled a three from half court and it's like, oh, it's amazing that they can do that. Yay. It was like they were cheering because the fans felt like they needed to win almost as much as the player needed to win. Listen to the refs call the game. Listen to the announcers announcing the game. It was a totally different vibe. It was serious. Everything surrounding it felt serious. Again, today's modern NBA, if you want a good feel for it, all you got to do is play 2K. You got an exact replica of what the game feels like today. And that is all show, no substance. So yeah, these are the things that made previous generations respected. So to suggest to the fans who actually was responsible for growing the game, to suggest to 90s fans who were the fans that were fans of basketball during the height of basketball, that we need to be taught to appreciate the current era of basketball. LeBron James, you out your mind. You are out of your mind. No, if the NBA is two things. It is the game and it is the product. When someone is not buying your product, you don't tell them, well, if you would just appreciate the product, then you would go ahead and spend your money for it. See, the problem is not the product. The problem is you need to be taught how to appreciate my product. No, that's not how it works. When it's a clear problem and consumers are complaining about the product, then you need to listen to the consumer and say, okay, we got to do something about this. Not make it about the consumer. It is not our job to accept whatever product you put in front of our face. That's not our job. We can spend money in various other places. We are not obligated to spend it on anything relating to the NBA. So if the product is if people are complaining about the product, you don't turn around and turn it back on the people and say, well, I think you guys just need to be taught how to appreciate our product. But this is the world. This is the soft, entitled world we live in. This is the epitome of entitlement. This is the epitome of no accountability. This is the epitome of no responsibility. This is the epitome of a complete lack of self-awareness. This is the epitome of being in complete denial. To not understand that, hey, if previous eras have been growing and growing and growing, if previous eras have been more and more celebrated as each decade goes by, and then we get to your era, and it takes a nosedive, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons. This is you guys' problem. James Harden. This is all of you guys' problem. You need to fix this. It is not the fans' problem. It is not nostalgia. It is not anything other than the fact that the fans who were responsible for growing the game, we've seen what great basketball looks like, and we know this is not it. We've seen what it looks like, and we know this isn't it. But anyway, we gonna hold up here, my people. Got another more and more ridiculousness from the Duck, and like I said, Steve Nash, this podcast is just making me like you less and less. Like I said, Steve Nash was never my favorite player, but he's not like a player that I disliked for any kind of reason, but this podcast is going to get the job done. Steve Nash, you need to jump ship, abandon this podcast. I hope these aren't your true thoughts and, that you putting out here, because the fans need to be taught to appreciate the game. That's that talk that happens when people aren't up to par. And I'm talking about Steve Nash, too, because, while we're talking about it, Steve Nash is somewhat overrated. That's just the facts. Steve Nash is somewhat overrated. And it's usually people who can't quite measure up that then starts to tell people to lower the standard. It's the people who can't measure up to what was previously great that starts telling people, oh man, it's just a different day and time. Now, today's a society of laziness. You can't expect us to work as hard as the other players. This is just the culture. So you need to just accept us for how we are. This is just how we do things. We're about the money and not the love of the game. But we still should say, receive the same praise and the same admiration and respect as previous generations, even though we don't do the things that the previous generations do. But anyway, I could go on, people. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think about this notion that fans simply need to be taught how to appreciate the game? Do you think that is a valid point, or is that a slap in the face to the NBA fans, like I said, who were responsible for growing the game decade after decade? And like I said, the 90s fans, we were the ones who were purchasing jerseys and all the NBA stuff more than any other generation, because that's when the NBA was at its height. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. You all have a truly, truly fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. All right.